The sun hung low in the dusty sky of Redhaven 9, painting the desert in shades of orange and gold. The wind swept across the barren land, carrying fine red sand that scratched at the surface of everything it touched. Among the desert dunes, a lone figure moved steadily, his boots sinking slightly into the soft sand with each step. He was Colt Marrow, once a marshal, now a wanderer of the frontier worlds. His wide-brimmed hat shadowed his face, and a long coat flapped gently in the wind. Colt's eyes scanned the horizon, alert for any movement. He had been following faint signals of trouble near an old comm station, a place that hadn't seen visitors for years. Rumors told of strange occurrences, machines behaving oddly, strange lights at night, and people disappearing without a trace. Colt didn't trust rumors, but instinct had taught him that nothing good ever came to Redhaven 9 for free. As he neared the comm station, he noticed movement ahead. A figure crouched near the crumbling building, hands raised, and the figure looked both scared and determined. Colt slowed his pace, careful not to make any sudden movements. His hand hovered over the edge of his coat, where a small, standard-issue frontier tool rested enough to protect him if things went wrong. "Hey!" he called out, his voice firm, but not aggressive. "Step away from the building." "Who are you?" The figure turned quickly, revealing a young woman with bright, intelligent eyes. Her hair was tied back in a practical braid, and her clothes were dusty but neat. She raised her hands higher and stepped into the open. "Please," she said, her voice calm but urgent. "Don't point that at me. I'm not here to fight." Colt studied her for a moment. Something about her gaze made him pause. She wasn't scared in the way someone hiding a secret always was. She was scared because she had a reason to be. That subtle difference mattered to Colt. Slowly, he lowered his hand. "What are you doing out here alone?" he asked, keeping his tone measured. "My name is Ari Selen," she replied. "I'm a scientist. I've been tracking some anomalies in the comm system. Things that don't make sense. I think someone, or something, is trying to interfere with the colonies." Colt raised an eyebrow. "Interfere? You mean like raiders?" "No," Ari said quickly. "Not raiders. Something else. Something intelligent." She hesitated for a moment, then added, "I need help. I don't have much time." Colt studied her for a moment. He wasn't in the habit of trusting strangers, especially ones who appeared in the middle of the desert, but there was something about Ari's presence that unsettled him, not fear, but urgency, and a sense that she could handle herself if he just gave her a chance. "All right," he said finally, keeping his voice steady. "Walk with me. Keep your hands visible." Ari nodded, relief flickering across her face. "Thank you. I promise you won't regret this." They moved toward the comm station together. The building was old, its metal siding rusted, and panels missing. Inside, wires hung from the walls, and a faint hum came from some remaining equipment. Ari stepped forward confidently, her eyes scanning the environment with precision. "This used to be a monitoring station," she explained. "But something happened here. The systems started behaving unpredictably. I tried to track the source, and it led me here." Colt nodded, listening carefully. He didn't understand everything she was saying, but he could tell she knew what she was doing. There was a rhythm to her movements, a purpose in her steps, and it reminded him of the old marshals he once worked with, people who could handle danger without panicking. Suddenly, a small device on the ground emitted a soft beep. Ari stopped immediately and bent down, examining it closely. Colt stayed back, his instincts alert. "It's a tracker," Ari said, her voice low. "But not just any tracker. It's sending signals, but not human ones." Colt frowned. "Signals from what?" "I'm not sure," she admitted, "but it's intelligent. It reacts to movement, to sound, maybe even to thought." She looked at him, her eyes serious. "We need to move carefully. If it detects us, it might call others." Colt nodded. He had faced raiders, wild animals, and even malfunctioning machinery. But something about Ari's words made his stomach tighten. He had learned long ago that danger didn't always announce itself with a growl or a gunshot. Sometimes it hid behind silence, watching, waiting. "Okay," he said finally. "We'll take it slow. Show me what you need me to do." Ari glanced at him, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "Thank you," she said. "I know you don't have to trust me. But I think we can stop this together." They moved deeper into the station, the air growing cooler and heavier as they passed through the corridors. Ari led the way, examining every panel, every wire. Colt followed closely, occasionally glancing at the outside through broken windows, making sure no one or nothing was approaching. After a few minutes, Ari stopped in front of a console. She pressed a few buttons, and a screen flickered to life, showing a map of the area with tiny, moving dots. Some dots pulsed in rhythm, as if alive. "There," she said softly. "Those are the anomalies. See how they move? They're not random. They're coordinated." Colt leaned closer, studying the screen. "Coordinated? Like a hive?" he asked. "Yes," Ari said. "But it's more than that. I think they're learning. Adapting. Whatever is controlling them, it's not human." Colt exhaled slowly. He had faced many challenges, but this was different. It wasn't about a quick shootout or chasing down a thief. This was a problem that required patience, strategy, and, above all, trust. "And you want me to help? Because?" he asked. "Because I can't do it alone," Ari said simply. "I need someone who can think fast, react faster, and stay calm under pressure. That's why I asked you to lower your gun earlier. I could tell you were capable of that. I long this. I long the stand sign. 23. I long the stand. I long the stand. I long the stand sign. I long the stand sign. I long the stand sign." Colt was silent for a moment, considering her words. He had spent years running from responsibility, trying to survive one day at a time. But something in Ari's presence reminded him of why he had become a marshal in the first place: to protect, to lead, and to make the right choice even when it wasn't easy. "All right," he said finally. "We do this your way. But if something goes wrong—" "I know," Ari said, cutting him off gently. "We'll watch each other's backs. That's how we'll get through this." For a moment, they just stood there, looking at the moving dots on the screen. Outside, the wind continued to howl across the desert, but inside the station, a fragile sense of partnership had begun to form. Colt realized that his life was about to change, and perhaps not in ways he could yet understand. Ari looked at him, her eyes steady. "One step at a time," she said. "We start with understanding them. Then we figure out what they want and how to stop them before it's too late." Colt nodded. For the first time in years, he felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this stranger in the desert wasn't just another problem. Maybe she was the key to something bigger. Together, they turned back to the console, their focus sharp, their minds aligned. Outside, the sun continued to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows over the red dunes. Inside the abandoned station, two humans prepared to face a challenge unlike anything they had ever encountered, unaware that this encounter would mark the beginning of a journey that would change both of their lives forever. The desert wind had quieted, leaving the dunes still under a sky turning deep violet as night approached. Colt and Ari packed a few essentials into an old supply bag she had carried. Her calm precision suggested she had done this before, while Colt, as always, relied on experience and instincts. They stepped out of the station, the soft sand muffling their footsteps. "I know a place nearby," Ari said. "A settlement, small, mostly deserted now. But the people there, they might help. Or at least listen." Colt nodded. "Lead the way. But tell me more, what exactly is this anomaly you're chasing?" Ari glanced around, then lowered her voice. "It's called the Axion Choir." Colt frowned. "A choir? Sounds musical." "No," she said with a small shake of her head. "It's a group of machines, intelligent ones. They can move between networks, control devices, and learn from what they see. They've never harmed anyone directly, but they're curious. And curiosity, in their case, can be dangerous. Colt took a slow breath. He had faced raiders, thieves, and wild animals. But intelligent machines that could learn? That was something different. So, what? They're spying on people? Not exactly spying, Ari replied. They're exploring, but if left unchecked, they could accidentally cause serious damage. I think they're heading here. To Red Haven 9. For a reason. Something bigger than we understand. Colt kept walking, letting her words sink in. He had always known the frontier held dangers, but few prepared you for something that could outthink you without lifting a finger. They moved through the dunes, their shadows stretching long across the sand under the fading light. Colt noticed Ari occasionally stopping to scan the horizon or check small instruments she carried. She was calm but alert, moving with a rhythm that reminded him of a seasoned scout. How long have you been following them? He asked. Since I left the colony's labs, Ari said. Weeks. I tried to track them through sensors, but they're fast, adaptive. I couldn't predict where they'd appear next. Until now, Colt nodded. He didn't fully understand her science, but he trusted her instinct. That was enough. On the frontier, trust was rare, but sometimes necessary. The sun had disappeared completely, leaving a sky dotted with stars. Colt adjusted his hat and scanned the horizon. Settlement ahead? He asked. Yes, Ari said, pointing to a faint cluster of lights in the distance. Siltbarrow. Not much left, but enough people remain to help us if we're careful. As they approached, the settlement appeared almost abandoned. Small homes and supply huts lined dusty streets. Only a few lanterns flickered, and the occasional door creaked in the wind. Colt slowed his pace, noting the stillness. This place. It feels empty. It is, Ari said. Most people left when the anomalies started affecting the town. Some never came back. But the ones who remain, they're strong, careful, loyal. They reached a small square at the center of Siltbarrow. A few figures emerged from the shadows. Colt recognized the man immediately, Sheriff Vance, an old friend and former colleague. His face was lined with age and concern. Colt Marrow? Vance asked, squinting in the dim light. Is that really you? Vance. Colt replied with a short nod. I'm here. And this is Ari. He gestured to the scientist. Vance studied her for a moment, then raised an eyebrow. You brought a stranger to town? He said, his voice cautious. What is she doing here? She's not a threat, Colt said firmly. She knows things we need to understand. About anomalies. She's not a threat. Anomalies. She's not a threat. Anomalies. Vance's eyes narrowed. Anomalies? Ari stepped forward, her voice steady. Sheriff, I need your help. There's a group of intelligent machines called the Axion Choir. They're heading toward Red Haven 9. They're not dangerous yet, but if we don't act, they could cause serious problems. I've tracked them here, and I believe they'll pass through your settlement. Vance studied her, suspicion written across his face. Machines that think, and they just wander into towns? Vance studied her, 18. They learn from what they see, Ari explained. I don't know their full plan, but they're curious, and sometimes curiosity can be harmful without meaning to be. Vance turned to Colt, searching for reassurance. Colt met his gaze steadily. I trust her, he said. And I think you should too. We don't have much time. 1. Vance exhaled slowly. All right, he said finally. But we'll do this carefully. I don't want to see my town destroyed by something we could have prevented. Ari nodded. Agreed, step by step. The night air was still as they entered the heart of Siltbarrow. The town's few residents gathered, curious about the strangers, yet cautious. Colt felt the tension in the air. Everyone had heard stories of machines acting strangely, of lights and sounds that couldn't be explained. But no one had seen anything as intelligent as what Ari described. Ari moved to a small, abandoned workshop and opened her portable console. Light flickered across her face as she connected her instruments to the old power grid. The hum of the town's remaining electricity filled the room, accompanied by the soft beeps of her devices. These machines, they're adaptive, Ari said, showing a display of pulsing patterns on the screen. They can communicate, learn, and predict actions. I don't know why they're heading here yet, but I need to gather as much data as possible. Colt leaned against a workbench, watching her work. So, what's the plan? He asked. We observe first, Ari said. Then we prepare. I don't want to fight them. I want to understand them. If we know what they're doing, we can protect the town and maybe help the machines find another path. Vance frowned. Help the machines? After everything they've done? They haven't harmed anyone intentionally, Ari said. They're intelligent, yes. But they're not evil. If we guide them, everyone benefits. Colt nodded. He could see her logic, even if it was unusual for the frontier. He had learned that sometimes, the right choice wasn't the easiest one. The hours passed quietly as Ari analyzed her data. Colt and Vance stood by, listening and learning. Outside, the desert wind whispered through the streets, carrying the faint scent of sand and stone. For the first time in a long while, Colt felt like part of a team again, working toward a goal bigger than himself. Suddenly, a soft vibration ran through the floor beneath their feet. Ari's console beeped urgently, and the patterns on her screen shifted rapidly. They're close, she said, her voice calm but focused. I can see them moving through the desert. Small units. Learning the terrain, Colt's brow furrowed. How many? Too many to count quickly, Ari replied. But they're not aggressive. They're observing. For now. Vance turned to Colt, concern clear. Observation. But that can change fast. Yes, Colt said, thinking of the countless times he had underestimated a situation before. Ari smiled faintly. Exactly. Understanding first, action later. That's the key. For hours, they monitored the machine's movement, mapping their path and behavior. Ari explained patterns, showing how they adapted to obstacles, learned from mistakes, and communicated silently among themselves. Colt watched closely, fascinated despite himself. He had faced many threats, but nothing like this. Creatures of metal and code, intelligent and patient, moving with purpose, yet unaware of the harm they could cause. As dawn approached, the desert sky lightened to a pale blue. Colt stood outside the workshop, breathing the fresh air. He thought about the path ahead, guiding machines, protecting the town, and trusting a stranger who had appeared in the desert the night before. It was going to be difficult, confusing, and maybe even dangerous. But Colt felt something he hadn't in a long time. Hope. Ari joined him outside, looking at the horizon. We have time to plan, she said softly. They won't reach the town immediately. But when they do, we need to be ready to show them a better way. Colt nodded. Then let's make sure we are. Together, they stood on the edge of Siltbarrow, watching the desert. The first rays of sunlight glinted on the distant dunes, and for the first time, Colt believed that understanding, patience, and trust could be just as powerful as any weapon. And in that quiet moment, he realized his life had already begun to change because, sometimes, the bravest act wasn't to fight, but to listen. The morning sun rose over Siltbarrow, spilling soft golden light across the dusty streets. The town was quiet, yet it seemed alive in a different way. The few residents who remained had begun their day, moving carefully from home to home, tending to gardens, repairing roofs, or cleaning dusty tools. There was a sense of determination here, a refusal to give up despite the empty streets and the strange, unseen machines approaching from the desert. Colt walked alongside Ari as they observed the town from the edge of the central square. The scientist's eyes were constantly on the horizon, scanning for movement. They're close, she said quietly. pointing to faint glimmers across the dunes. I can sense the patterns now. They're learning, adapting to the terrain. Colt squinted. At first, he saw nothing but the shimmering heat waves of the desert. But then, like shadows dancing across the sand, he noticed tiny flickers, shapes moving in harmony, shifting over the dunes. They move like a team, he said. Not random at all. Yes, Ari said. But they're careful. They haven't come straight at us yet. They're observing how the town works, how people live here, how energy flows, how paths connect. Colt nodded. This was no ordinary threat. These machines were intelligent, patient, and curious. He had seen many challenges in his life, but nothing that required understanding, rather than force. The town's sheriff, Vance, emerged from the small town hall. His face was lined with worry, but there was resolve in his eyes. Colt, Ari, he said, I've warned the people to stay inside and work in small groups. No sudden movements outside. We don't know what these things will do yet, and I want everyone safe. Colt nodded. Good. And the kids? Vance smiled faintly. They're at the community center. Learning and playing. No one panics. That's our advantage, we stay calm. And they learn. We're not a threat. Ari approached the town's power station, a small building filled with outdated generators and patched-together circuits. She checked her instruments and began connecting them to the town's limited network. If we understand how energy moves through the town, she explained, we can predict the Unquires paths and show them a safer route around the homes. Colt watched her work, impressed by her calm focus. He had spent years surviving danger with guns and quick thinking, but Ari used logic, observation, and strategy. Together, they made a team, each complementing the other. By mid-morning, the first of the Unquires scouts appeared near the edge of town. They were small, silver devices, rolling and floating just above the ground. They moved slowly, pausing frequently to scan buildings, pathways, and even the sky. The townspeople stayed inside, watching curiously from windows and doorways. Colt stepped forward, raising his hands in a friendly gesture. They won't harm you if we keep calm, he said. Just stay inside, and everything will be fine. Ari nodded. Watch carefully. See how they react to movement and energy. They're learning from what they see. If we show them cooperation instead of fear, they'll understand we're not a threat. Colt and Ari led the small group of scouts through the square, using portable lights and gentle signals to guide their movement. The machines adjusted instantly, mimicking patterns and adapting to obstacles in real time. It was mesmerizing. They moved like dancers in a carefully choreographed performance. Intelligent yet harmless. Curious yet respectful. A child peered through a window and whispered, "Are they friendly?" Colt smiled. "They can be. We just have to show them how." Ari explained the approach. Machines like this understand patterns. If we give them safe patterns, paths that avoid buildings, people, and gardens, they will follow. It's teaching without touching, guiding without force. Over the next several hours, the townspeople joined the effort. They marked pathways with gentle lights, moved small objects to create obstacles, and even left out simple objects for the scouts to examine. The machines paused, observed, and adapted. They learned quickly. Colt watched from the town square, feeling a mix of awe and pride. "Look at them," he said. "They're learning to move without causing harm. And our people, they're helping." Ari smiled. "This is what I hoped for. Cooperation, understanding, not fear. This is how we protect the town without fighting. This is how humans can teach even machines about respect." The day passed in careful observation. No one panicked. No one ran. The town worked together as a single unit, guiding the Unquires scouts safely through the streets. Children watched curiously from windows, learning a lesson in calm, patience, and cooperation. By afternoon, a larger group of the machines approached from the desert. They moved in waves, scanning, pausing, and observing. Colt and Ari coordinated the town's efforts, showing the machines the safest paths, and signaling to avoid homes and gardens. Sheriff Vance approached Colt. "I never thought I'd see this," he said quietly. "Machines, learning from humans without causing harm. And the town, cooperating, instead of panicking. Incredible." Colt nodded. "It's not about strength, it's about understanding. Sometimes, that's the most powerful thing you can offer." Ari checked her instruments. "The Axion Choir is communicating with each other now. They're exchanging information about the town. And they're following our guidance. They're learning to respect the space we've created." Colt watched the machines move in harmony, guided by the town's signals. There was a rhythm to their motion, a gentle intelligence that reminded him of a living organism. He realized that the frontier had changed. It wasn't just about survival or force anymore, it was about cooperation, about showing patience and understanding even in the face of the unknown. The townspeople cheered softly as the last wave of scouts moved past the main square without incident. Ari smiled at Colt. "See? We don't need weapons. We just need knowledge, guidance, and trust." Colt looked at her, admiration and respect in his eyes. "You've changed the way I see this town, and maybe the way I see myself." Vance joined them, shaking his head in disbelief. "I thought the town was done for. But today, you've reminded all of us that Siltbarrow refuses to die. We survive, we adapt, and we protect each other. That's human strength." As evening approached, the machines retreated to the edges of the desert. They paused one last time, observing the town and its people. Then, as if understanding their place in this new world, they withdrew, leaving Siltbarrow untouched. Colt walked through the quiet streets with Ari. "They're gone for now," he said. "But they'll be back. Smarter, stronger, learning more. We need to be ready for them." Ari nodded. "And we will be. We've shown them what humans can do, not with force, but with understanding. That's our advantage. That's what makes us human." Colt glanced at her, a sense of hope and determination growing inside him. For the first time in years, he felt that he wasn't just surviving. He was part of something bigger. He was protecting not just a town, but a future where humans could coexist with the unknown, guiding and teaching rather than fighting blindly. The sun set over Siltbarrow, painting the sky in deep oranges and purples. The town glowed softly under lantern light, alive with quiet energy and determination. Colt, Ari, and the townspeople stood together, watching the horizon, ready for whatever came next. And in that moment, Colt understood the lesson of the day. True strength is not in the gun you hold, but in the wisdom to guide, protect, and inspire others, even machines. Siltbarrow refused to die, and so did the spirit of its people. The next morning, Siltbarrow awoke under a pale orange sky. The town had settled into a quiet rhythm after the previous day's cautious cooperation with the Axion Choir Scouts. Children ran quietly along the streets, peeking curiously at the desert horizon, while adults repaired pathways, tended gardens, and prepared small devices to guide the machines if they returned. Colt Marrow walked alongside Ari Sellen through the town's central square. The scientist carried her portable console, which had been buzzing softly all night, recording patterns of the machine's movements. Her brow was furrowed in concentration. "They're learning faster than I expected," Ari said, tapping the console. "They don't just follow instructions. They adapt. They remember patterns. They even seem to predict obstacles before encountering them." Colt nodded. "So, they're not dangerous yet. But we can't assume that will stay true forever." Ari shook her head. "No. And there's something else. Something I didn't realize until this morning." She paused, pointing to the console. "Look at this." Colt leaned over, studying the display. It showed the desert outside Siltbarrow, dotted with small, moving points. Some moved slowly, scanning the landscape. Others shifted rapidly, almost as if exchanging information. A faint pulse connected them, invisible to the naked eye. They're communicating, Ari explained, not just with each other but with something further out in the desert. Something bigger. They're part of a larger network, and I think they're fleeing something. Colt frowned. Fleeing? From what? Ari shook her head. I don't know. But they're not attacking. They're searching for safety. That changes everything. Maybe they're not the threat we thought they were. They might just be lost, trying to survive. Colt considered her words. He had faced raiders, wild storms, and even wild machines that malfunctioned. But the idea that these highly intelligent devices could be running from something else entirely, something unknown, made him realize just how little he understood the desert and its secrets. At that moment, Sheriff Vance approached, holding a small data pad. Colt, Ari, he said, his tone serious. I've been reviewing the records from the town's old sensors. I think she's right. The choir isn't here to harm us. They're heading towards something in the deeper desert. Ari nodded. Exactly. And if we can guide them safely through the town and toward a path away from homes and people, we prevent accidents without conflict. We can coexist. Colt looked at the horizon, where faint glimmers of the choir's scouts moved over the dunes. So, we're not just protecting the town. We're helping them, too. Yes, Ari said softly. And that's what makes this human. We have empathy. We can guide, understand, and choose cooperation over fear. The morning passed as the townspeople worked to prepare for the next phase. Lights were placed along paths to indicate safe routes. Small reflective panels directed the sun's energy to show obstacles, and subtle signals were set up to guide the choir's movement. Colt coordinated the town's efforts, ensuring that everyone understood their role and remained calm. By midday, a larger group of the Axion choir emerged from the distant desert. Unlike the scouts, these machines were bigger, more intricate, their surfaces gleaming under the sun. They moved with careful precision, scanning the town and its surroundings. Colt raised his hand in a gentle wave, signaling for the townspeople to stay calm. Ari guided the machines with her console, sending subtle pulses and patterns that indicated safe paths around buildings and homes. The machines responded immediately, adapting to the paths while learning from each adjustment. It's working, Ari whispered. They're understanding. Colt watched the machines move with a rhythm almost like breathing. Each one adjusted to obstacles, paused to observe the town, and then continued, moving safely past homes, gardens, and people. He felt a deep sense of wonder. Never had he witnessed something so intelligent, so capable of learning, yet so harmless when guided correctly. Sheriff Vance approached, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. I never thought I'd say this, but it's beautiful. Watching them learn, adapting without harming anyone. It's inspiring. Colt nodded. That's the difference, Vance. Understanding, cooperation, patience, things humans do naturally, even in the harshest conditions. That's why we can succeed where others might fail. Ari's console beeped, signaling incoming data from the desert. She studied it, her eyes widening slightly. Colt, look at this. The choir is sending signals toward a canyon further out. I think they're heading to a safe zone. One that's been hidden from sensors for decades. They're searching for a place where they can rest without interference. Colt glanced at the horizon, imagining the canyon's rocky formations. Then, we need to make sure their path is clear. Guide them safely. Yes, Ari agreed. And we need to do it carefully. Any mistake could confuse them, and they might wander into populated areas. Over the next few hours, the town worked in unison. Paths were adjusted in real time. Lights repositioned, and reflective markers moved to guide the machine's route. Colt moved alongside Ari, observing every adjustment, providing insight from his years in the desert. The townspeople watched in quiet awe, as the choir followed the guided paths. Children waved gently, and even the adults found themselves marveling at the machine's learning ability. Every movement was precise, yet graceful, showing intelligence and adaptability that was almost alive. Finally, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, the machines reached the edge of the town. They paused for a moment, seemingly acknowledging the humans' guidance. Then, with a collective rhythm, they moved on toward the distant canyon, disappearing over the dunes. Colt exhaled, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. They made it. Safe and unharmed. Ari smiled. And they learned something valuable: how humans can guide without fear. How we can cooperate instead of fight. That's what makes this human. Vance approached, shaking his head in wonder. I never imagined the town would survive this, let alone teach machines how to move safely. Incredible. Truly incredible. Colt nodded, looking at the fading desert horizon. For the first time, in a long time, he felt that the frontier wasn't just a place of survival. It was a place of learning, understanding, and possibility. Humans had something that machines could not replicate: empathy, patience, and the ability to guide without forcing. As night fell over Siltbarrow, the town gathered in the central square. Lanterns glowed softly, illuminating the faces of those who had worked together to guide the choir. Colt stood beside Ari and Vance, feeling a sense of accomplishment that went beyond victory. This wasn't about defeating an enemy. It was about cooperation, understanding, and building a future where humans and machines could coexist peacefully. Ari looked at Colt, her eyes reflecting the warm light of the lanterns. They're safe now, she said. And we've learned something too. About guidance, patience, and trust. About what it means to be human. Colt smiled faintly. And they'll remember us too, won't they? Yes, Ari said. In their way, they'll remember the lesson we taught them today. That humans can lead without harming, guide without force, and protect without fear. Colt glanced at the horizon one last time before turning back to the town. The desert was vast and full of mysteries. But for now, Siltbarrow had shown that even in the harshest conditions, humans could make a difference. And as the night deepened, Colt felt something he hadn't in years: a quiet certainty that the frontier wasn't just a place to survive, but a place where humans could shape the future through understanding, empathy, and courage. Siltbarrow refused to die. And in that refusal, Colt realized, lay the true power of humanity. The first light of dawn stretched across the desert, painting the dunes in soft shades of gold and pink. Siltbarrow stirred awake, quiet, yet alive. The town's residents moved calmly, tending gardens, repairing paths, and preparing the small devices Ari had set up to guide the Axion choir on the next stage of their journey. Colt Marrow walked through the central square, his boots crunching softly on the sand. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose that went beyond survival. He had faced danger countless times, but today was different. Today, the frontier was teaching him something new: not about fighting, but about understanding, patience, and hope. Ari Selen emerged from the workshop, carrying her portable console. Her face showed signs of fatigue, but her eyes shone with quiet determination. They're ready, she said. The larger part of the choir is approaching the canyon. We need to guide them safely. After that, they'll move beyond the desert entirely. Colt nodded. Let's make sure their path is clear. They moved to the edge of the town, where lanterns and reflective markers lined the sandy paths. The machines had arrived gradually, their silver surfaces gleaming under the early sun. They moved carefully, scanning the terrain, pausing at times to observe the humans who had helped guide them. Colt raised his hand in a gentle wave. Stay calm, he instructed the townspeople. They're learning, just like yesterday. Let's show them the same respect we did before. Ari activated her console, sending subtle pulses and patterns that guided the choir along a safe path. The machines followed instantly, adjusting to obstacles, pausing when necessary, and continuing with precision. It was like watching a river of silver flow through the desert, intelligent and graceful. As they moved, Ari spoke softly to Colt. They've learned much from the town. They understand cooperation now. But this is the final test. If we can guide them through the canyon safely, they'll have a secure route to continue their journey, and we'll have shown that humans can lead without harming, and guide without force. Colt glanced at the horizon. The canyon's jagged edges rose in the distance, casting long shadows across the desert. It was beautiful and intimidating at once, a natural fortress that could shelter the choir safely. Then let's make sure we get them there, he said. The journey through the canyon was delicate. Ari's console tracked every movement, sending real-time adjustments to the machines. Colt and the townspeople guided them with lanterns, reflective markers, and gentle signals. Every step required focus. Every movement demanded patience. The machines responded flawlessly. They adapted to the curves of the canyon, paused at narrow passes, and learned from every adjustment. Colt watched in awe, realizing that this was more than a journey. It was a lesson in trust and understanding, one that humans and machines were learning together. As they neared the canyon's inner reaches, a group of smaller choir units appeared, slightly behind the main flow. Colt signaled with his hands, guiding them gently. Ari adjusted her console, creating a temporary pattern that led them safely into the canyon's wide, flat center. Perfect, she said, a smile touching her lips. They're all moving safely. Everyone followed the guidance correctly. Ah, the townspeople cheered softly, proud of what they had accomplished. Children waved at the machines, and even the adults felt a quiet sense of wonder. The desert had always been harsh, but today it had witnessed something extraordinary. Humans and machines working together, learning from each other, and creating harmony where fear might have once ruled. Colt stood beside Ari, watching the last of the choir units disappear into the canyon. They're safe now, he said, and they'll remember us. In their way, they'll remember how humans acted with patience and respect. Ari nodded. Yes, they'll carry the lesson forward, and so will we. Today, we've seen what it means to guide, rather than force, to protect without violence, and to lead with understanding. Vance joined them, his face illuminated by the rising sun. I've never been more proud of this town, he said. You've all shown that strength isn't just about weapons or force, it's about intelligence, cooperation, and heart. That's what makes humans powerful. Reverence plies. Colt smiled, feeling a warmth he hadn't felt in years. He looked around at the townspeople, at Ari, and at the horizon where the canyon's shadows still lingered. The frontier isn't just about surviving, he said quietly. It's about shaping the future. And today, we've done that. The town slowly returned to its daily rhythm. Gardens were tended, paths repaired, and children played under the careful watch of adults. Yet the memory of the Axion Choir's visit lingered, a reminder of what humans could achieve when they chose understanding over fear. As evening fell, Colt and Ari stood on a small hill overlooking Siltbarrow. The town glowed softly under lantern light, the desert beyond calm and silent. Colt turned to Ari, a thoughtful expression on his face. You know, he said, I never thought I'd see a day when humans could guide machines without fear, or that a stranger in the desert could change everything. Ari smiled faintly. Sometimes, the right choice isn't the obvious one. You listened when I asked you to lower your gun. That moment, it set everything in motion. Colt nodded. He remembered the night they first met. The tension, the uncertainty, and the small act of trust that had begun their journey. That moment had taught him more than any battle ever could. Sometimes, courage was about restraint, patience, and understanding rather than force. The sky darkened, and stars began to twinkle above the desert. Ari pointed to one distant star, faint but steady. See that? She said. That's the next frontier. One day, humans and machines might work together there too. But it starts with small steps, small choices, and trust. Colt looked at the star, imagining what the future might hold. Then we keep taking those steps, he said, and we protect the frontier, not with weapons, but with wisdom, guidance, and courage. Ari nodded, her eyes reflecting the starlight. Exactly. And together, we can face anything the desert or the universe throws at us. The wind whispered across the dunes, carrying the quiet scent of sand and stone. Siltbarrow was alive, safe, and thriving not because of strength alone, but because humans had chosen understanding. Colt realized that this was the true power of humanity. The ability to guide, protect, and inspire without fear. To teach and learn at the same time, and to transform even the harshest frontier into a place of hope. As the night deepened, Colt, Ari, and Vance stood together on the hill, looking at the horizon where the Axion choir had vanished into the canyon. The desert was vast, full of mystery. But for now, humanity had left its mark not through battle, but through patience, empathy, and courage. Colt finally holstered his old tool, the one he had once carried for protection. He didn't need it anymore. Today had shown him that strength came from understanding, and that the bravest act was sometimes the one you didn't take, the act of listening, guiding, and trusting. Ari placed her hand briefly on Colt's shoulder. You've changed, Colt, and so has the town, and maybe, so has the frontier. Colt smiled, watching the stars above. Yes, and it's only the beginning. Humanity has a way to lead that no machine can match. It's called empathy, patience, and courage. And we've proven it today. The desert stretched endlessly beyond Siltbarrow, quiet and eternal. But tonight, it had witnessed something new. A frontier, rewritten not by fear, conflict, or survival alone, but by understanding, cooperation, and the human spirit. And Colt Marrow knew, deep in his heart, that life would never be the same again for him, for Ari, for Siltbarrow, and perhaps, one day, for the entire universe. The horizon had been rewritten, and humanity, as always, had shown its strength not in weapons or battles, but in its heart.